Malevius, I see that you're enjoying sitting down in my specially made Malevius Capture 3000 chair. Now, take a nice little rest as you watch your precious Goodsdale get dipped by my massive helicopter into the Grand Volcano.
What to do? What to do? I want to save Goodsdale so badly, and I've spent my whole life saving Goodsdale. But at the same time, this chair is so comfy. I love the way it feels. I love the way it cushions me.
Malevius, you're betrothed. She's on the top of the building. Malevius,
I wiggle my tush this way. I wiggle my tush that way.
are you?
Yes. And every angle.
This button is going to kill everybody in the city here.
I love this chair. It's the
If
trap
I
that it's
pull
so
this
comfortable.
crank, it'll actually kill you too. I mean,
you don't even need to activate these handcuffs. I'm already trapped just from loving this chair.
Jesus Christ.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of CREWprov Musings. I'm one of your hosts, Hal Munger. This is episode number 35, and joining me now on the line is your other host, Julian Bernardo.
35 is a special number to some people. It is the jersey number of Kevin Durant. It is the age at which you can become the president in America. And that's all that I know about it. Anyways, today's topic is pretty fun. We are going to be talking about something that I can't even say without getting into the meat of the episode, because I don't know which way to refer to it.
Well, before we even talk about the topic, we should announce that we are running for president.
We are running for president.
Now that we're old enough, CREWprov Musings is officially running for president. And part of that campaign is you subscribing to this on wherever you get your podcasts, following, liking, commenting. I don't know, whatever you can do, sharing. Because that's what keeps this podcast going.
Yeah, I think we are going to be a write-in candidate. But I think that should be fine. Yeah, in nature with us, we're definitely running third party.
But the party's not stopping there. The topic of today is really about how to do scenes, is maybe one way of saying this.
Yeah.
And what elements are important in scenes, and specifically for an acronym that can help you remember what's going on in the scenes. But there's a lot of hot debate about which acronym is the best. So we're going to be hashing that out on the pod.
Yeah, and there's no agreement between us either.
Do you agree with yourself?
Not entirely. I think we should open with the thing that will get people on the page of what we're talking about, which is, if you are familiar with improv, you may have heard the acronym CREW in the past. So not to favor or center that as the best acronym, but that stands for, in its most simple conception, character, relationship, objective, and where. And it's often taught as, these are the things that you should establish in a scene. Largely, we want to present both different ways to think about these things than you may already be familiar with, as well as different acronyms that all add at least one new concept here.
Yeah, because in terms of, you're talking about like being, the best acronym. This has always been like, what? Gather your crow at the beginning of the scene. Get out your crow. What does that even mean? Like, how does that even help me remember anything? I can never remember what the letters stood for. The crows have nothing to do with improv. I think just as an acronym, it's not a very good acronym. Even if you want to establish characters, relationships, objectives, and whereabouts.
Yeah, I mean, I don't doubt that it's not an intuitive acronym. I think that, though, historically, And famously, people do remember Crow.
Okay. Well, if it isn't objectively the worst acronym because
Mhm.
the first tweak that happened to Crow made it into a more useful tool for improv and a worse acronym. And that was a friend of ours, Cameron, was like wanted to really get in the idea of emotion into the scene, and so there was just a silent E added to the end of Crow by
Mhm.
Cameron.
The Russell Crowe
Crowy.
style.
And that, its acronym points go down because you can't hear the E, so it doesn't help you remember that the E is there. And there's no such thing. Or, yeah, Russell Crowe maybe has more to do with improv than an ordinary crow does. But it's
But not
still.
that much more.
Um,
But this is where I will say that I think that this is my favorite presentation of the concept, is Crow with the silent E at the end.
So-
In this,
you're maximizing then on relatability to improv rather than acronyms fitting.
yeah. As I mean, I'll say even as somebody who dealing with acronyms that are kind of BS and don't make any like inherent sense is like 25% of my my like day job basically. And so I have a high tolerance for the acronym being kind of weird.
When there are no good alternatives, I'm okay with the acronym being weird, but there's a pretty great alternative that someone came up with. It might have been me, it might have been someone else. I don't know. But at some point, it got shifted around to core. Find the core of your scene, which is a really good acronym in terms of get to the core of your scene. That's character, objective, relationship, emotion. So you don't know where the heck your characters are, but and I never cared that much about where. So
yeah, and we'll talk about where we'll talk about each of these things in greater detail. But yeah, the concept here is switching out the W in like the OG Crow for the E and then shifting it around. I do agree that the core acronym gets at like why Crow is important in the sense of like it feels very intuitive of like, oh, get to the core of the scene. That makes sense to me as like, getting to what's important here. But I will always be were-pilled in a way that I can't fully accept core.
But if I'm core pilled and Julian's crow pilled, there's a Muprov Musings compromise that's coming for you.
And then there's the other Muprov Musings compromise of sorts, which is the acronym that is most useful for this episode, which is the acronym CREWprov. This is the same letters as Crow, but this is the order in which we're going to go through these different concepts. Character, objective. So I guess it just comes down to the context, right? Right now, we are cow repilled.
Yeah, and the reason for that is that character can even start before you're on stage or like before you get any input, depending on what improv style you interact with. But you can sort of come on with a character before you even know any other information about the scene.
Yeah. So let's talk about character. I think building interesting characters is something that is a kind of widely held desire in improv everywhere, no matter what kind of improv you're doing. I guess this can be divided into what do we have to say about this that is probably in line with maybe the general wisdom, and what do we have to say about this that is maybe different from the general wisdom?
Yeah. I think in line with the general wisdom would be the power of like physicality in creating a character and exercises. We're probably gonna do a whole episode on that at some point. So we might, but the way in which changing the way your body moves, particularly in subtle ways rather than like crazy ways, is something that we're interested in. But the power of that to really define a character. Worldviews, which we've already done a full episode on. Go back and listen to Worlds and Worldviews. It's one of our best. Do you have any other big character things?
Something that people say sometimes in like acting contexts that I think applies here but is maybe harder in the improv context, is to have more in your head about what is going on with your character than you're like saying, which I think is in line with what you mean about maybe subtle ways to let your physicality inform your character. But maybe you do have a very obvious thing in mind, like, oh, my character, like literally, used to be a train operator and has like some injury as a result of that, and that is like informing the way that I play. But the thing that's different about this from improv and acting is you got to be ready to drop this maybe rich tapestry that you have in your mind if something comes up that contradicts it. So it's a bit of a dial where you can turn up how much you're thinking about like the backstory and just the facts about your character, the more you're able to quickly switch into something else.
One way that I often build, not like, if not a backstory, but like a kind of constellation of things is you're gonna hate this, but animal party of taking 1% of an animal's DNA into your your character, and like, but you can actually do this with any noun. I don't know if you ever do this, but like, can you throw out the suggestion of a noun, Julian?
Yeah, zipper.
Yeah, so like if you think of like what would a zipper be like as a character, and like how might they stand, or like I think either a zipper is like super tight and zipped together, or they've completely fallen apart and are like totally and they might have these kind of two sides of their personality and be kind of like almost in this kind of split personality way depending on the context. And like their mood swings might go up and down a lot, like just things like that, of like
they might get stuck.
Yeah, exactly. Of like, ooh, mid sentence of like, so just having a character that's influenced by a zipper in a subtle way is a pretty fun way to make a character.
And I think that the Muprov of this is, I actually, in this context, don't hate on this like animal party concept, and really like this being informed by a noun thing, in the sense of, I hate often when we're practicing these kinds of skills, like, oh, let's build a character based off of an animal or an object or something. In my experience, that's often been in the context of playing some improv game, and then everybody does this, and then we all basically go up and do our animal thing. Oh, I made my little pun, and then the scene is over. But these concepts can have legs if you keep the subtlety, and the punchline is not that you're all going to kind of realize that you're like actually a zipper, or that like you're all going to go up and say your kind of zipper pun. You just take that as the suggestion, just as you take any other suggestion, and then you also accept that you're probably just a normal person, or just a person, and let that inform how you shape throughout. And it might be that 4 scenes later, something that came up in scene 2 is kind of more important and more the thing that you're thinking about. But it's a way to have like a not generic character, even from the top.
Yeah, ideally, I think my ideal level of, I said 1% is that someone watching who did not know anything about the word zipper being involved would never connect the dots. Oh, they're like a zipper. But if you told them after the show, oh, I was thinking about a zipper, they'd be like, whoa, that's so cool. I get like how that, and especially if you do yourself based on some sort of object or thing that is in the actual show that you're in, if you don't mention it till like minute 45 or whatever, and then at some crucial moment, you're like, you actually make the metaphor out loud.
Yeah.
With the thing in the room, everyone will be like, whoa.
Yeah.
That's a classic delayed gratification Muprov musings thing. If you wait, then
one way to think about this that might be easier to glomp onto if it's hard for you to conceive of how you might like 1% a zipper is, I feel like animation does this, and I'm kind of queuing this up without having like a great example, and so slight SOSing in case you come up with one. But I feel like often characters in animated TV shows are based I will go through the show and I will just enjoy them as a character and think they're cool. But then afterward, I'll find that all of their design was like themed off of something. And like, if you look through all of their clothes that they wore the whole time, or all of their shapes and the way that they moved, that it was all informed off of this, I think often like animals or uh, various things. But that is like a way in which this is like actually done IRL in other art forms.
Yeah. Because it makes the character cohesive, right? At the end of the day, anytime where you can be like, and this is what Julian was talking about at the beginning of not showing your cards, like having a backstory but not showing it. Anytime where you're following a logical system and you're pretty clearly following it, but the audience can't see it, it will feel magically cohesive.
Mm-hmm. How could we bring this back to the like fundamentals course context? How can we practice this? I think this does look a bit different depending on whether you're doing this with more experienced improvisers or whether it's with new people. But yeah, how can we practice any of these character concepts in a fundamentals course?
Yeah, for more experienced people, I think that what we just talked about is kind of fun, of like a fun lever to play with. For the fundamentals, we almost skipped over this because, in my opinion, it's the least important of them. Mainly because it's kind of like the language in Shakespeare of if your character isn't that interesting, that primarily affects the audience.
Yeah.
And then secondarily affects you, and then tertiarily affects your partner. And I think just centering the things that most affect your partner, like it does affect your partner a little bit if your character is super bland or whatever, but they actually might have more fun playing in a scene with someone like you don't know. So I think that focusing on what we were talking about last time, which is how do you give characters to other people, like so endow and notice things about them and bring them out and give them moments to shine those things about them. So if you notice someone has this worldview, how do you concoct a situation that might, intensify that or challenge it or whatnot?
Yeah. I think I totally vibe with what you said, because when I've tried to convey more MU-Prov concepts, whenever I'm just working with people who are less familiar with that style of play, often the way that I lighten that load is by saying, just play someone close to yourself. Just play a character that, is like you, because when you're trying to do a lot of the things that we're going to talk about for the rest of this episode, not having to worry about this aspect and just being able to act like yourself can often be helpful.
There's not a huge downside to playing someone who's similar to yourself. And there's a huge upside in terms of easiness. So why not?
Yeah, that's the C. Anything else we want to hit on the C before we move on to the O? The O is a fun one to talk about, and we should crack it together, because the O stands for objective, and objective is something that potentially more than some of these other things, at least, feels like it varies a lot depending on the context in which you're improvising, and it also leads to some kind of common traps potentially, and. So the first order trap that this might lead to, that people know that this is kind of frowned upon in improv, is often could lead to like a transactional scene, or a scene that is just about doing something where the characters have no stake in it. When you tell people at least to focus on an objective for this scene, it might start, I want to go to the pizza store and buy a pizza, and then they go and buy a pizza. And nobody really cares about what they saw.
Yeah, and the reason comes down to like this kind of tension thing, which is the sort of underlying objective skill is how do you have an objective without achieving your objective or blocking your objective. Which is like, because you don't want the block scene where you're like, I really want this, and the whole scene is, I really want to get through that door. You can't. I want to. You can't. Like that's totally boring. And if you have the scene, I really want to get through the door. Okay, you get through the door now. So part of it is like, if you have an objective that's not emotionally relevant, or that's just like a literal thing, that's kind of lame. But also there's this. It's actually a pretty advanced skill, I think, and one that I really train on often by playing games like Invisible Tug of War or combat things or literal games of like, how can you, when you have a game that's going to end, and it can only go on for so long. How can you make it so that there are dynamic, interesting beats within that game,
Mhm.
rather than just finishing immediately uh, or never getting there?
Yeah, I think within thinking about the broader like narrative long form context, one of the times where I feel like I'm most flexing this part, or just that I'm most thinking about objective, is when I'm playing a villain. In the sense that a villain really dials in on some of these things of the biggest way that a villain, or in many stories at least, a villain has a large effect on the plot of the show. And in fact, they have a very strong objective, a thing that they want to do. And it is, in fact, in direct contention with the hero or the protagonists. And it is probably going to be one of these things where the villain doesn't get what they want. And so I think that is an example in which this like objective concept, as we're discussing it now, comes out in a longer form show.
That's really funny because I agree with that. But
Mm-hmm.
at the Magnet, when I was taking the musical improv classes, they taught it where protagonists had a want
Mm-hmm.
and villains had a worldview, which is the exact opposite of the way that we teach. I think it comes down to their shows are 30 minutes and ours are an hour.
Yeah.
Where if you're trying to arc out something really short like that, having a want where the protagonist gets their want is easier than having a worldview where an emotional shift causes them to learn something and change who they are as a character, which is what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
And they don't want your villain just to be a rival or someone who's directly opposed to the protagonist. So they're like, oh, just have a worldview. And then, initially they're opposed to the protagonist because they just don't line up, but you can shift the world and then the villain is,
Yeah.
So if in the context of a long form show, like an hour, villains might be the people who are having the biggest wants.
Yeah.
If in the context of like a 20-30 minute show, if maybe protagonists often are someone who might have a want.
Mm-hmm.
If you have one scene that's like 5 minutes, what is the role of wants? Are they different types of wants? Who has them? X, Y, or Z?
Yeah. Yeah. I think my intuition here lies or just points me towards the idea that for a long show, the like protagonist and antagonist can have very opposing wants, and that over the course of the show these wants are reckoned with one another. Either one of them is totally eliminated, or somehow they converge on something. And I think the same thing happens in a scene, but just as a result the wants can't be like so opposing. For example, I'm thinking about a scene that was in a class that I was in recently where kind of classic style of scene where it was a father and a son, and they I'll explain this, and then we'll talk about it. But they kind of wanted to talk about the thing that they liked. So the dad wanted to like get the son into like this business thing that he's into, and then the son wanted to like get the dad to appreciate his like guitar playing. And so this want, like it's like a very basic want, and this is more like an evaluative want after seeing the scene than probably what they were thinking about. They just were saying things, and then that's what was true about their characters. But what happens here is they converge onto, their collective shared want by the end of the scene was just wanting to connect as father and son. And that was I think that's an example in my head of you come out with like some sort of like want that it can't be that like high maintenance or like that strong, because you want both wants to either to be reckoned with, either by one is totally denied and one is accepted, or they converge onto both wanting and getting the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you you tailor how strong your want is to the context of the show scene or whatever that you're in, which for me kind of makes it feel like this letter O is one of the least cool letters in the whatever acronym you do. And also that it's really functioning like a vowel rather than a consonant.
Mm.
It's not starting its own thing. It's really just an extension of the C that comes before it in core, the best acronym. Whereas in Crow, it's not really an extension of relationships. So I don't know why you're totally on that train still, but
Yeah. I think well, we talked a little bit about this before we recorded. Of I think that objective is can be mapped onto like plot
Mhm.
or just keeping the scene interesting. And I do think that the biggest blind spot of MuProv, or I don't know about blind spot, but the most common way that I would expect that you try to do MuProv and then it's like you kind of fail or you're not happy with the product is that you end up doing boring scenes, which the other style of improv, uh, they might be boring to like an improviser who's like seen this kind of stuff, but at least to an audience who's watching this, there's a lot of stuff happening. You know, it's like it's very big, and so it's not surprising to me that as improvisers thinking about these different things, the objective is hard for us to fit in because it isn't super within like it isn't one of the natural axioms of what we do. It's more of an upshot, but that does make me still want to value it in a balanced sense of making sure we don't lose the fact that at least a lot of people want to put on like an interesting show for people.
uh, one maybe proposed replacement then is kind of like, and this is I think what the whole get to the core of it is all about is like what's the point of the scene? What is actually the core of the scene? Why do we care about this specific scene?
Mm-hmm.
And like so getting to that, which I think is usually one of the involving one of these letters,
Mm-hmm.
but then also kind of knowing your place and building something based on that place in the context of the overall show. Because we are talking long shows. We're not really talking scenes in general.
Yeah.
Day is like the intro to scenes before learning your long show. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and when I was just teaching folks Shakespeare, like that was a huge like thing of like, all right, if you're doing a platform scene at the start of a show, like you really don't want to waste that much time with like you wanting a sandwich or like something small or distracting
Mm-hmm.
or like unless it's really indicative of something of your overall character.
Yeah.
And what you're trying to build out is these big worldview style things or like mega wants of like I want to get married or like I want to huge amount of money or like things that are
Mm-hmm.
going to take you the whole show to get.
Yeah.
Um, but if you're building a side character who's funny and has some effect on the plot, but is more in this kind of relief view, having a small want, like I really want people to. I remember Danya at some point played in a scene where she really wanted to tell people about her button.
Mm-hmm.
She had a little button on her chest, and that was her thing, her character thing. And
Yeah.
that's just a super delightful scene. If all the other characters um, are operating in ways to get the bigger things that they want, and they have to deal with this person who really wants to tell them about their button and work the button into the conversation. And as
Uh-huh.
long as the whole team understands that your hour-long show is not about this button, but
Mm-hmm.
this button might be relevant to the plot, and this character might finally get a moment to talk about it. Like it's really delightful to see that kind of work.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, actually, after what you just said, I know it's not entirely in line with it, but I'm actually losing my love for O as a thing that needs to needs to be in this acronym. Just in the sense of, I think that that is the natural state that not even just like the general improv community, but kind of like anybody who's starting improv is coming in with is they want to be making stuff happen. And so, you know, we shouldn't have one of the parts of Crow be like, B for breathing, because everybody is just going to naturally do that. Like the informative part of this acronym is teaching people to do the things that that they don't already do. And
Mhm.
so, yeah,
Yeah.
objective is important for the reasons that we said, but I think within the MuProv frame, can be
Yeah, maybe a little less.
yeah.
Except the one last little bit is like, and this I still think it gets sandwiched into character.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the exercise for this, the classic one is like the stinky, smelly, sexy thing, or like
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's funny where you're in a scene
Yeah,
and you're
thank you.
attracted to one person, you're repulsed by another person, and those kind of micro objectives. Having those little thoughts in your mind,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, we should move on in terms of
All right.
time, but
Yeah.
I'll say that as a final thing, like one of my favorite works of fiction ever, Breaking Bad, I think is an exploration of character through objective, where the objective of the main character is kind of privileged as the most important thing in terms of what we're watching, but by the end of it, it all comes around to serving to teach us more about this character rather than being interesting for the sake of the objectives themselves.
All right. Well, if we want to save time, we could just skip over the W, the worst letter in the acronym.
You slimy little grumbo. Um,
Uh,
let's look. I'll go in and say that the where always to me was important in the sense of early on when I was taking my first improv course. This is some of the most kind of mind blowing stuff. I did a lot of, or not a lot, but I did improv in high school. And I think a lot of early improv that you do is going to be super talking heads. Uh, and when you're doing that, it feels kind of no different than were you doing this as like a radio show or like a podcast or something like that. And I think improv as like a staged, play essentially, you need to be in the world and like understand the context of where you are and like which is literally what is around you in order to maybe occupy the characters from the inside. Maybe I don't know if that makes sense to you. Like in order to truly feel and act as that character, you need to see as that character, and what you're seeing is different from the
mhm.
stage.
Yeah, it's definitely a testament to people's like, imagination and that kind of thing. I think that the thing that gets me about this one is that to me, it doesn't matter which location you're in, if that makes sense. Like, I totally agree that you should be engaging with an environment and acting like you're in a place.
Hmm.
But and this is actually kind of what bugs me about relationship and character, is that the specifics of the decision don't matter that much.
Hmm.
Uh, so if someone were to not really make the decision, it wouldn't matter that much to me as long as they were still physically engaged and doing interesting things. And I've seen totally dynamic and interesting scenes that take place in kind of in the void, so to
Yeah.
speak. So it feels a little bit less fundamental to me. But what doesn't feel fundamental is in the realistic scenes, this idea that if you're trying to go for realism, how people really talk and interact is popping back and forth subtextually between the big emotional overarching themes and the micro of what's literally going on around them. And when you see really skilled improvisers, it's like honestly like skilled Go players who play away from the situation where you're talking about something, and then all of a sudden there are these non sequiturs
Hmm.
where you're suddenly like, damn, it's cold. And then you go back to talking.
Yeah.
And it's hard to keep more balls in the air, but the better you get, I feel like the more location becomes important to what you're doing.
Yeah, I do think that you're right in that this like genre or what kind of show you're trying to put on, yeah, less genre, but just format or whatever kind of show you're putting on is will privilege or not the where part where, yeah, if you want to put on a show that feels kind of abstract and like really glomping on to different concepts. Like one of my favorite musicals that Hal and I were talking about recently is Company, and Company exists nowhere, right? Like they're kind of nominally at places in various scenes, but it's not. If it were an improv scene, we would give them an F on the where. And so definitely shows can not have the where and be interesting, but I think I just am always very wowed and impressed whenever I see people skillfully crafting the wear.
Well, how do you feel about someone starting a scene with space object work? Are you like, oh yeah, get me into that scene? Or are you like, "Mrr."
I definitely have positive feelings towards it. I'm not. Yeah. Yeah. I think that so much of the time. Okay. This goes together in a way that I think you like, which is so much of the time we're not talking to people or saying anything. We're just doing, and so starting with space object work, I think, is a wonderful way to reflect that and have a scene where there's no talking. And I think while it's not one to one, when you are doing space object work, kind of the key question is like, where are you, or like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that this is where we disagree, which is that I think space object work that's answering the questions of where are you and what are you doing
Mm-hmm.
is not how I want to start my scene. My opinion is that
Mm-hmm.
like all bad improv starts with shoveling. And that's
Mm-hmm.
something that I've held in my mind for a long time.
uh,
Uh, and that the fundamental point of starting a scene silently with space objects is the manner in which you're using that object.
mm-hmm.
And I think that people kind of confuse that, where they're like, oh, I'm really realistically washing this dish at the start of the scene. And they're
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, I'm a good improviser because I'm holding
Mm-hmm.
this dish in the right way. But it's not like your scene is going to be better if it's about washing dishes or if it's in a space. Like, however, if you are washing the dish in a way that like you're clearly so happy and like then that's something interesting. If you're washing the dish and I'm so angry to be washing this dish, and like you're just clearly venting your frustration and scrubbing it way harder than you need to, like that's an.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, and digging is just you're rarely
Yeah.
digging when it's very much about what's in the hole. Why are you digging? Are we pirates?
I mean, to me, it's an immersion thing, where I feel immersed in the scene. Like if someone's up there and they're doing really realistic dishwashing, uh, it's one of those little things where if they truly are doing realistic things where they're like reapplying soap to the sponge, like I could watch that for so long. And it makes me feel like something real is happening there on stage in a way where the where uh is maybe lumped in my mind with stuff like stagecraft and some of the acting skills, which we might agree with in the
Mm-hmm.
sense that some of it is a bit auxiliary to maybe what the theory of improv or the theory of scenes should be. Like it's maybe the separate thing of like how to carry out that. But so yeah, maybe there is less need for it to be in the acronym, but I do feel like it's important for that reason, in that it establishes the world and makes the audience feel as if the people on stage are living in some consistent world.
Well, in that case, it's kind of nice to have it at the end of the acronym because uh, I like it as a mode of communicating the other things. If it's the prism that some of this other stuff gets shined through, and a good way to communicate to your partner before they get on stage, I'm this person, I feel this way, here's the context that we're in, then
Mm-hmm.
we're just saying kind of lines up with weight from TJ and Dave,
Mm-hmm.
of like where the concept of weight is kind of like how important is this moment,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is pretty linked to where you are in some ways,
Yeah.
or what you're doing, where you are / what you're doing in that place. You can tell if someone's at a wedding or if they're, driving in a car and about to have an argument that's going to end the relationship or whatnot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, that's our spiel on where.
Any
Um,
exercises before we move on?
I remember in high school, actually, there wasn't much good that came from my high school improv, but one thing was we had this mode of operating where during rehearsal, sometimes there would be someone who's on watch for all of the violations. So if you walk through the table, or if like the thing moved from where it was placed before, then they'll like, call like a buzzer or something, and you're just trying to pay specific attention toward making sure that the physical reality is consistent.
Yeah, that's a fun thing. I think also just doing things where it's like one person endows a bunch of objects and someone else goes on and uses them, or each
Yeah.
person takes turn endowing objects and using them, whatnot. And with all this stuff, I think some of the best way to practice it is just the side coach scenes, which is start a scene, 15 second ends, pause, and be like, you have an established C, you have an established O.
Mhm.
Try to get that out in the next 15 seconds.
Yeah.
So all right, now we're finally into the ones that actually are where it's at. Uh, re.
Relationship.
Oh yeah.
um, is the first of these two. And Yeah, I mean, relationship. I agree that relationship is like the juice. This is what makes most of what's happening on stage interesting.
And I think that, like all the stuff in the Mew context, I think that we're talking less about the type of relationship you could get from a suggestion and more
Hmm.
about still in the emotional, which is why I like pairing it with the E.
Hmm.
Really, how you feel about each other. The TJ and Dave concept here is heat, the intensity
Hmm.
of how you feel. Because uh, I feel like it's less important that these two people are sisters, and more important are these sisters who are best friends, or are these sisters who, feud all the time, or these sisters who haven't seen each other ever since birth, or X, Y, or Z. But
Yeah. Yeah, and these are two concepts, right? Which I might refer to as like the kind of nominal relationship and then like the actual relationship. So, how if you had to write down on a paper like what your relationship to this person was, what is that? And then what is like the actual way that you interact with one another? And when you delineate these concepts and you maybe privilege the actual relationship, I think it makes for interesting scenes, and it also gives you the tools to uh, try finding interesting quadrants here of let's have a relationship where you would expect nominally the nominal relationship implies that maybe there would be like a very close relationship actually, but then it's not, and then that gives the audience questions. Or on the other hand, like something that when you're very like warm and loving with the store owner, it's like, oh, huh, okay, there must be some sort of a story there.
if you're trying to do comedy improv, this is one of the best ways to get comedy. Julian just wrote that whole song about it's a love song between advisor and advisee.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think that just, yeah, that kind of, that kind of, especially high intensity emotions and caring in mundane contexts are really funny.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, how do we like kind of build that actual relationship though? Because it's easy to put a name to the nominal relationship and then just act in that way. But how can we get at this actual relationship?
Well, I think there are two ways. There's the sort of yes and way and the reflection whatever way. And I think the yes and way is to, throw down some names or observations or things, then build back and forth. And the other way is to just sort of notice from a couple lines of dialogue what the vibe is, and then kind of amplify that.
Hmm.
Because oftentimes, just by sort of the way that you sit down or look at each other or say the first line, you can
Hmm.
already tell what the sort of heat of the situation is, and how well you know each other, and how you might know each other without ever saying, "Oh, we're roommates."
Hmm.
If I sit down on the couch next to you in a certain way, we might know that we're roommates.
Yeah, I would say this is like the unifying thing between both of these is like everything is an offer, take all offers, where you are like big listening and literally watching moment between you and your scene partner of anything they do, however they sit, even if based on interacting with them that they didn't do it intentionally, you take that to have some implication on the relationship.
Mm-hmm. And the classic thing here is the choose to know your partner, choose
Right.
to do scenes with people who have a strong existing relationship, act in a way that, and act like you actually know them rather than being like, oh, sister, I forgot what your name was or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think that because that is kind of like the thing that you probably already know from improv, there's some fun exercises for how to make dynamic and interesting relationships without choosing to know your partner. And that was something we wanted to talk about in the episode today.
Yeah, so there's this amplify aggravate concept, and I think you're a bit fresher on it. So perhaps you should explain the nitty gritty. But we're also going to show you a little bit.
Yeah, if you want to generate heat, two great ways to do it are either high friction or extremely low friction, and just getting all that speed out there. Um, so what this means is if my character has a worldview or some sort of character trait or a want that really heavily lines up with the other character,
Hmm.
either the other character's worldview directly opposes and we're just going to hate each other right away, or it really lines up in a way where we both have the exact same worldview. It's like, finally, someone else who understands me.
Uh-huh.
that can be a really strong way to base your character off the other person's character in a way that'll make the scene fun and dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Should we
do you want to try some?
should we do some? Yeah.
All right, let's do amplify first because it's cute.
And this is just like a scene, right? This isn't like a 3-line scene or anything like that.
No, yeah, this is a little scene.
Cool.
Can we get a suggestion for a quality that one of our characters might have, or that both of our characters?
Athletic.
Yeah, cool. Let's do athletic. Oh man, I'm gonna fail this test.
Come on, man. Fail this test. You're right. I mean, I'm probably gonna fail too.
I mean, we're the last two people here.
Dude, the teacher left. I think that probably doesn't even think we could get a good score if we collaborated.
Oh, Jesus. Well, you know, why are you taking this class anyway? I'm doing it because I need the requirement in order to stay on the football team.
Yeah, well, my stupid counselor made me take it too because he said that it would be good for me to broaden my horizons and gain a scientific understanding of the world. Like, what does that even mean, man?
I don't know, dude. What are your horizons normally?
Dude, my horizons are getting out there and giving it my all. Like, people talk about horizons and discovering the world. Dude, I feel like I am discovering the world when I am working on my wide receiving, man.
Whoa, you wide receive?
Yeah, dude, I wide receive.
You're a football player?
Yeah, I play on the city boys team.
No way. I'm on the local college team.
Dude.
We probably practice in the same facility.
Dude, wait, with the red lockers?
Yeah, I'm locker 307.
Well, I'm locker 308.
What? We could show up at the same time and store our stuff in each other's lockers because some of my stuff is too big for my locker.
Yeah, dude, I'm always bringing my pads and my helmet, and I have to fit them in all sorts of other people's lockers just because they're so big.
Yeah, I mean, how tall are you?
6'2".
I'm 6'3".
Dude, that is perfect height. I mean, looking at your arms, you're probably a quarterback.
Yeah, I got a mean throw. How do you get those legs though? Do you squat?
Oh, I squat. Dude, I have been squatting hard lately. You know, I got these weightlifting shoes, and it really does like make a difference having your heels lifted. I don't know if you know about this, but like in terms of ergonomic movement and like range of motion, it actually like really makes a difference. I've been like 20 pounds up.
Hey, if you put those shoes in the locker, maybe I could try them on sometime. And I could put my bands in your locker.
Oh, dude, I've never had bands. Everybody says that they make you feel real tighter. This could be awesome, dude.
Dude, I gotta say, like, do you want to just leave this dumb test? I'm gonna fail it anyway, and I'd love to, like, you know, whip up a shake and maybe we could talk more.
How about we go to Jimmy's just down the street?
Oh, yeah. Oh man, dude, I'm so glad that I took this stupid class. You're the coolest person I've ever met.
You're the raddest dude I have ever seen.
Oh, bring it in, bro.
Yeah.
Athletics.
Yeah. Athletics. Let's briefly, the amplify scene, it's there's just a dynamic on stage. Like different scenes are just more or less interesting based on, whether the topic and the dialogue was fun or not. But it is just more engaging to watch something on stage when like something is happening between the two people. And yeah, when you're amplifying, something is clearly happening.
Yeah, it's cute and fun. It's the yes side of improv. If you're ever in a rut, it's a great way to get out of that rut because you're just going to connect with your partner. And
yeah, it's a nice moment for like when you're feeling bad in a show. For whatever reason, just to go out there and have an amplify scene with somebody.
All right. What about an aggravate scene?
let's do ambitious and clumsy.
Okay.
So I'm thinking that we need to make sure that we have the PowerPoint like outlined before the weekend, so that over the weekend we can all fill in our individual parts, most likely.
Oh, did you guys like you haven't made your part yet, right?
No, I haven't typed it up. It's still in my notebook, basically.
Oh my god, thank God.
Uh, yeah, no, I mean, I don't think the typing up will take long as you have it all written out already in your notebook. It's just like a copy and paste job. I think there's actually some apps that you can use that I've been finding out about recently that you can take a picture
I'm
of
not an
some.
app person.
Huh? Oh, um,
No, I do everything in browser.
in browser. Huh. I mean, that
Like
does
if
it.
I need an alarm clock, I'd Google alarm clock.
Uh, yeah, sure. I just feel like you might be operating on lower efficiency in my
I don't
mind.
even have a notebook.
You don't have a notebook? How do you take notes?
I know.
And
I
you
signed up
do,
for this class because it's a group project based class.
and you expect me to just do everything for you, I imagine.
Yeah.
You're a freeloader. You're lazy. This is going in my report at the end of the project.
And I'll write a really bad one about you.
So what you think that Mr. Gonzalez is gonna agree with you over me in terms of who was the good student, who was the bad student? Look, I have showed up every day to Mr. Gonzalez's class. I have gotten A's in both this year and last year's English course.
Joshua's personality has a way of dividing the group. He often would try to micromanage other people's assignments, and it tore us apart. His insistence on scheduling led to a lot of emotional conflicts between group members, and he also was unable to allow me to achieve my learning goals.
You wouldn't. Dell
I
is a
don't know.
notorious freeloader who comes into class smelling of some sort of substance that I wouldn't even want to list on this paper, and contributed essentially nothing to the project, knew nothing about what the underlying structure of Rittman's argument even was, and simply made me do all of the work.
I don't know. I don't know. You can submit that. I can submit that. But my strategy works out pretty well for me for one reason.
And what reason would that be?
You know who cares about what grade we get?
Who? You slimy little gumshoe.
All right.
Yeah. But so we're getting pretty high on time. We should hit the emotion, but the biggest way to think about this is just typically there is like a rich relationship that you can draw if the characters have high heat and they have like an existing relationship that has a rich pool to draw from. But aggravate and amplify are two ways to have a dynamic without having a rich history.
Mm-hmm. And finally, emotions. This is really where everything, rubber hits the road. This is what makes the scenes good. And the secret to all the other things is relationship is just a way to generate emotions. Objectives are just ways to generate emotions, character. And if you're trying to have your scene have an arc, it's just emotions, baby.
Yeah. Emotions. Emotion-based improv. It changed everything for me in the sense of, I think, thinking hard about emotions towards the latter end of my like college improv career gained me a lot of. It made scenes click in an interesting way. One way that this comes out in just like other forms of like writing or anything like that is you want your characters to care about things basically and react to what's happening on stage. Thinking about emotion colors it in an interesting way where it's not just like this 1-0 binary that I think often comes out in improv where the like emotional content is either I want this to happen or I don't want this to happen. And like everybody in the scene is either kind of like pro or con something. Whereas like emotions like explodes this out into dimensions where you don't, you're not just like pro or con this thing. You just have a feeling or an emotion about it. And it I think opens up the possibilities for future directions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think all of these come down to this kind of commitment thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like of yeah, can you actually engage with the emotions in the way that you're saying, or are you the less committed version of just like, oh, I kind of loosely want, like technically want this, or my character is technically feeling sad, like
Mm-hmm.
uh if if you really love someone and then the person out of the blue gets stabbed on stage, are you going to emotionally react as if someone you love just got stabbed, or are you just going to stand there shocked like an improviser and be like, what's going on, and make a joke about it?
Yeah. I
Um,
think Shakespeare is a great way to get into this, and that you play the emotions very big in Shakespeare in a way that you might want to dial down in future formats, but it gives you that kind of vocabulary where you get some experience with feeling these things in a larger way.
so all those exercises from the emotions and moo monologues episode are still really useful. You can do moo scenes. You can do the O ball where you throw a ball. And one thing that Cameron really turned us all onto was also like technically understanding how emotions work, of like
Yeah.
being able to precisely like see someone express an emotion and put a specific word to it, or get a specific word, turn that into some sort of nonverbal thing or a verbal thing that doesn't use that word, and
Mm-hmm.
have people in the audience who didn't know what word you got get it. And you can play a lot of games about, this is a scene where after the scene you have to guess what emotion was supposed to be there, X, Y, or Z. And the final exercise is It's Tuesday. This is the classic. At any point after a random line in the scene, someone can clap, and you suddenly have to react strongly and emotionally to that line, and then justify later why you did that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's Tuesday. Kind of forces you to to have emotions, have big feelings. Should we try it? Should we do it?
Sure, I think we can, for in interest of time, we can do a 3-line scenes. 3-line
Yeah.
scenes are just in general. This workshop, this day of the workshop, was our most action packed one. It's the hardest to get through. It
Mm-hmm.
I felt like it was the one where people really developed the most. It involved a lot of side coach scenes, and part of how we did that is by using a lot of 3-line scenes, which is what you heard at
Mm-hmm.
the opening. But usually, the first time someone tries a 3-line scene, it's like, "Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to
My
meet
name's
you.
oh, I'm so glad we met." And then it's like the 3-line scene. It's like, oh fuck that, or rats that we ran out of time. And the thing that it slowly gets easier over the course of the class as you learn about all these different things. And by the end of it, the thing that really makes it click is that your second line of a 3-line scene should almost always be a big emotional reaction to what just happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Let's do
let's
it.
do it.
I heard rats. I'm thinking mice. I'm thinking computers. Hmm. I'm looking through the hard drive, and it seems like the only files that remain are the 2023 reports.
Oh my god! Oh my god! There's nothing from 2022. Oh how? Yes. I mean, yeah. That's terrible. And I gotta be off. Let my family know.
Okay. We'll do. Have a nice night, Jackson.
3-line scene.
And scene,
3 lines.
3 line scene. That scene only had 3 lines.
Um, lines writing down. Uh, yeah. I guess you can come along on this excavation.
You're saying that you would allow me to be in the cave with you, to walk down the halls of the temple, to hear the little mutterings that you have as you see a brick and you know if it came from Mesopotamia or somewhere else. You're saying that I can be part of this journey with you.
Listen, Dylan, you did well with a dinosaur, but don't push it. We're silent in the cave. Three-line scene.
Three-line scene. That scene only had three lines. Dinosaurs. Movie. Camera. You look good here. I just am going to need you to flip your bangs. They're covering your eyes in the photo.
I look good. I look good. Is good the word that you're going to use for me? I'll tell you what's good. Good is other lower models. If you want to work for a good model, well, then you can, because you're fired.
I just wanted them to see your eyes. We're selling mascara. What are you talking about?
Three-line scene.
Three-line scene. That's it. Only had 3 lines.
If the emotion is like one of those more caricatured, big, big things that's a higher level than what you do in a day to day, it makes the scene a lot more energetic, dynamic, and interesting. And if you can pull off the subtle stuff too, that's pretty awesome as well.
Yeah. I think the easiest way is to start, especially if you're doing, something more protracted like 3-line scenes. Getting it across big is often the clearest way to go through with it, but the direction should probably be getting comfortable playing these really big emotions, because I think they are probably easier than the smaller ones, and then working your way down and trying to see how clear you can convey emotions while being more subtle about it.
So if we're hitting the wraps on this in our final debate, I think it's time to unveil CREWprov Musing's compromise. I still think Core is better. Julian still thinks Crow is better. But if you're trying to figure out what to build at the beginning of your scene and you're trying to get things in order, you better assemble your crew. Yeah. What would a heist be without your crew? What would a ship be without your crew? You got to assemble your crew. Does it have to do with improv? Sort of. Does it? Gathering crow really didn't make sense. Assemble your crew kind of makes sense, but also kind of works improv wise.
Yeah. So, if you're assembling your crew, maybe the O isn't there. Maybe that's not there. But we talked about maybe being okay with dropping that one. And you can think about your improv crew as your little inside out emotional things, but for improv, the personified versions of character, relationship, emotion, and where.
And Julian and I still debate on what the W stands for. Julian thinks it stands for where. I think it might be worldview, which is a good place for objective. But either way, assemble your crew.
Assemble your crew.
Well, we got our whole crew assembled, you and me right now. So, without further ado, this has been CREWprov
Cruisings. So my sign off is I in some ways had my first published statistics related article out there.
What'd you prove?
But in the least real way, which was on Monday, which was April Fool's. The department chair sent out a link to an article that the CS department had put out for April Fool's. That was like or maybe it was physics actually. I was like, oh, quantum parking lot, new quantum parking lot we're making. It has so many spaces, whatever, yada yada yada. She was like, does anybody want to write one for statistics? Because this could be freaking awesome if we also posted an article. And I grinded it out for like an hour. And they posted my article on the stats website. So it's on the news of the U Michigan stats website. You will see that we are now
What's the headline?
Statistics department to adopt randomized grading scheme. And you flip some coins to find out what your grade is. I don't know. It was fun. It was one of those moments where I could have started my assignment for the week on Monday. I came in really prepared to do that, and then I just got that email, and you just gotta see it through sometimes like that.
Yeah, Julian, you said that this was in the least serious way, but I feel like this is maybe just in the most Julian way.
Yeah, perhaps. I was telling people this is the way in which I'm most useful to this department.
And it's possible that like the intersection of your love of you know, comedy or writing or and your love of statistics is actually going to be a lot of what influences what you do in life.
That's very true, and it'd be the core tension that I try to resolve
Like,
throughout my life.
even if you were to get a job like in some company that was doing statistical work or academia, I feel like part of how you got it would involve some sort of troll thing like this.
Yeah. No, I think the people part of it is a big part.
I read your article, boy. It's funny. I want you to be the new CEO.
Yeah. Hopefully, literally.
So, or like, I could totally see you writing a comedy article that then turned out to have a real discovery in it.
No, that is kind of my. I've been ideating on stuff like that of like stupid math, like truly putting forward like a mathematical theory behind like something stupid, and the something stupid is yet to be discovered, but I think it would be funny.
Well, then more stupid awaits us.
More stupid awaits. Yum nom 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 nom. Yummy stupid. Yummy stupid.
Can't you see me now? Can't you see me now? Everything is changing. Can't you see me now? Can't you see me now?